Hi, this is Lindor with Watery Wishes, and today I have an art journal for you. Now, this is probably the brightest art journal I've done so far. I think this was the second one I ever did, and I'm using the Dylusions paints, and I'm using a baby wipe to apply them. And I'm sort of going for like a rainbow effect at the moment, but I'm going to do some foliage down the bottom. So I started with the greens and then progressed up to the purples and a little bit of black up the top. Now here I am stamping some images from the Beautiful Day stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. I stamped a lot more than I actually ended up using. This is a stencil that came in the same kit as the Beautiful Day stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. And you don't really see any of this when the page is finished, but it's just building up texture at this point. Now this is a generic border stencil that you can get at just about any art store, and this doesn't show up much. Well, it doesn't show up at all in the finished piece either. And this is, I'm using some Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide through a Feathers Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous stencil. At this point, I'm really just trying to build up texture and experiment, because I know that a lot of what I'm doing now probably isn't going to show through at the end, but it does help bring that texture to the page. Here I'm darkening up the edges with a bit of Wilted Violet Distress Oxide. Now I'm doing the same with the Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide. And now I'm going to push all of this texture and colour back with a bit of white gesso. I've watered it down a little bit. When it dries, it doesn't really dry white, it just mutes everything that's there, because it picked up some of the colour from the background anyway. Now I'm using some stamps from Simon Says Stamp. They are the Spring Flowers stamps, and I'm also using some leaves from the Winter Flowers, I believe. Now I'm using a pen to draw in the bits that didn't quite stamp properly. This is an EK Success pen, but any sort of art pen to do, a Micron or a something. And now I'm just going to paint in those leaves, and I'm going to use my Ranger brushes for that, because I don't need to use my expensive watercolor brushes for acrylic paint. So I bought some, not cheap, but cheaper Well, they're still fairly cheap, but I bought them specifically for this type of thing. So I'm going to have the Ranger brushes for my acrylics and stuff. And I've got some cheap brushes for my glues and things. And then I've got my watercolor brushes that are actually, I've got a couple of very expensive ones. Some silver black velvets, which are lovely. And then I've got some moderately expensive ones, the Royal Langnickel, which have a little bit more spring in them compared to the black velvet brushes. Okay, now that I've painted these, I'm going to take the ones I printed out earlier, stamped out earlier. I'm going to lighten this green up with some yellow paint and give them, and paint over them as well. I sort of wanted these ones darker in the background because there's going to be a lot over the top of them. And I'd actually stamped these in 2 lots. I stamped the long stemmy leaves, and then I stamped a whole heap of the little ones. And I'd already fussy cut out all the long stemmy leaves, and they actually would have been easier to paint if I'd have just not fussy cut them out yet. But I get the job done. And I didn't cut them all, see? I left some of them in to cut after they're dried, which made things actually a lot easier. And they're painted a much more vibrant green using that yellow in that green. And here I am putting a little bit more white over the bottom of the page to set back those leaves a little bit more. Now I'm adding a little bit more texture with a Finnabar Messy stamp, and that's Blueprint Sketch. I'm going over the top of everything with. That's Seedless Preserves. And it's just colouring the white up, the white paint that I've put over everything. Twisted Citron for down the bottom. I wanted that one for so long. It's such a bright, vibrant, yellowy green. It's just such a beautiful colour. Flicking some water on there, bringing it up. Now I believe this stencil is called Mosaic, and it's a Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz collection stencil. And I'm using some Ranger texture paste, which I find really good. It's just, I think the containers are pretty small, and I'm going to need to buy, like, if how much I've used is any judge of how quick it's going to go, I'm going to have to buy a lot more texture paste before not too long. Here's me trying to match the stencil back up, and I just decided to wipe it all off and do it again. And as you can see, the texture paste has already taken on a little bit of that colour, but I'm going over it with some of the oxides that I used on the page earlier to give it a little bit more colour. I love that Blueprint Sketch too. It's such a It's such a deep blue. Now these are mainly the spring flowers that I'm putting out now, the actual flowers. Going to stick all that down with some matte medium. And then I'm going to seal them in because I'm going to colour them with my Faber-Castell Artist Pit markers. And they're India ink, so they dry permanent, but you can sort of blend them and move them around a little bit when you first put them down. And a lot of these leaves are actually stamped together, but I fussy cut them out and separated them, which helped with me being able to spread them out around the bottom of the page. And as you can see, I've got some lighter ones and some darker ones, which adds a little bit of depth to the page, just a tiny bit. Now I'm sealing that butterfly with some gel medium. And I'm going to seal the other one as well, because I'm going to colour both of them with the Pitt Artist markers. Those littler flowers down the bottom were actually a last minute addition that I stamped out because I felt that it was a bit bare down there with all that green. I thought that it was going to need a pop of colour. So now I'm just using a damp finger and blending those artist markers into the flowers. And of course you could colour these flowers any way you wanted. You could paint them with acrylics, you could use watercolour paper and watercolour them in and then fussy cut them out. It's just, I just bought these Pitt Artist markers and I really enjoy using them. So, and I find that the purple is really bright and vibrant, which is one of the reasons I wanted to use that colour. Now I'm going to do some rainbow butterflies, because who doesn't love rainbows? And it's a very rainbow themed art journal. Occasionally I'll put it up against the art journal to see what colours I need to have around the edges so that it doesn't blend in and pops out a little bit more. And as you can see, I'm just testing the colours on the scrap piece of paper that I have. This video is much longer than my other videos, and I've actually been waiting to post this video because previously my internet was very slow and it would take 3 to 4 hours to upload a 17-minute video. Whereas Now I've been connected to the NBN and I've got a much better upload speed. And the other day I uploaded a 17-minute video and it took something like 15 minutes. So I'm happy. So now I can give you guys longer, less cut down, sped up videos and explain things a little bit more thoroughly. So hopefully once I get my camera back, I've got a plan for organizing my videos a little bit better so they're a little bit more coherent, and we'll get that going, and hopefully I'll have a better workflow sorted out for my videos, but it all depends on when I get my camera back, because the current camera I'm using, not on this one but on my other ones, isn't that great. Okay, side note, I felt like the butterfly was a little bit too bright. Jeez, I sounded like Kelly Latavola then. So I put a little bit of white acrylic paint over it, but I believe I go back over it with some more Pitt Artist markers and bring out a little bit more colour in it anyway. So back to my current camera. My current camera holds a micro SD that's 8 GB and it's got these tiny little batteries in it, and that's fine because I've got 2 batteries and the 8 GB and the battery run out. One gets full and then the battery runs out around about the same time. But so I can put the second battery in, but when the second battery runs out, it takes about 3 hours to charge each battery, and you can only charge them in the camera because it's one of those little action cams, like a GoPro but not a GoPro. So it takes me 6 hours just to get the batteries full for the next video. So at the moment, if I run out of battery before I've finished my project, then those things aren't likely to get shot because I'm not going to wait 6-7 hours to film the next bit of whatever. So I'm trying to organize my card making and my videos so that it will fit within the time span of the 2 batteries. But sometimes I'm going to miss things. Whereas with my Canon, which I currently don't have, it takes maybe half an hour to recharge the battery. So if I'm in the middle of a project and my battery goes, I'll just charge it, go grab something to eat, take a little break, come back, and it's done. So much easier to work with. So I'm hoping I get that back very soon. So I'm trying to figure out what color to use to shade around the flowers, and I'm also trying to figure out, I was using a water brush and it was a little bit too wet and taking away a little bit too much of the color, and I didn't quite like that brown, so I stopped using the brown, and I'm going to pull a water brush out and try and get rid of some of it. And I tried a bit of yellow, that didn't look good. And I'm going back to a darker brown. And I switched to the microfiber cloth because my finger was just getting covered in all these different colours and it wasn't working very well. So the microfiber cloth helped me smooth things out a little bit. A little bit better. Now I'm just brightening up the green on those leaves, making them pop from the background a little bit more because that artist marker is so bright. back to shading around the images. I think, if I remember, that the me using the microfiber cloth also helped me around the texture paste. Darkening up those flowers a little bit with more of that purple. And again, the water brush has just got too much water in it, so I'm just using one of my watercolor brushes with a little bit of water off to the side to move that ink around a little bit. And I just find I've got much more control than with a water brush. I find that the water brushes, if you fill them up, sometimes they're a bit too heavy if you only want slightly damp. It's also the reason why I'm using the Royal Langnickel instead of one of my black velvet brushes. The black velvets are really great for holding water, which is something that I didn't quite want in this situation. So if you are into watercoloring and painting, it's really good to get multiple types of brushes because they all serve their purpose. Now I'm using a blue marker to deepen up that border. Also, I know my content release schedule isn't really a schedule, it's just like when it happens, but I'm reaching the end of my university degree and my units are like, the actual workload within the units is getting a little bit harder. So the weeks I've got assignments due and things like that, and I've got to do essays and stuff, it's a little bit harder for me to get this stuff done. But this study period I took an art unit, which is like, oh, godsend. So now I've just written out a quote, sentiment quote, and I wrote it out in pencil first. And it says, "Don't look so far ahead that you fail to see what is in your periphery." So basically, don't concentrate on your goals so hard that you forget to just enjoy the moment and see what's around you right now. I think it's a very important thing to remember. So I just wrote it out with an alcohol marker, a cheap one that's got a bullet nib, and I'm doing like a drop shadow effect around it with a Jelly Roll pen, a number 10. And that's the page, pretty much, I think. Oh, gel pen, highlights. I love this gel pen. This gel pen is great. I haven't tried any of the other brands, but I've got 3 of these, all different sizes, and this is the 10. I find the 5 pretty useless. The 8's really good when you want to find a line, but the 10's really great. So, here are the close-ups. I really enjoyed doing this. It was really bright and fun. And a really good play with some of my new supplies. So, hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button. I'd love it if you subscribed. And I'll see you guys in the next one. And don't forget, have fun crafting your imagination. Bye.